Hello, friends. This is Carter, and welcome to this episode of Making It Up, the conversation series where I talk to other writers. And we focus not so much on any particular books, but really kind of their journey, their roots of creativity, their trials and tribulations trying to get published, all that fun stuff. So it's really a great show, I think, especially for aspiring writers, struggling writers, or just listening to different voices talk about how they approach their craft. And speaking of, if you want to kind of go deeper into ideas about craft, make sure you check out my company, Unbound Writer, and you can find it at unboundwriter.com. I have a series of online classes on there. I'm adding to that. I'm starting to do a series where I'm interviewing other writers in depth about their process. It's going to be a series titled How I Write. And just, various best-selling authors, long-form interview that's going to be packaged as a class. But I also do one-on-one coaching. I do writing retreats and workshops. So all of that is listed on Unbound Writer. That's unboundwriter.com. All right, today I had a wonderful guest on. I had Sydney Leigh on today. Now, Sydney reached out to me. We have a mutual friend in Hannah Mary McKinnon, whose name you hopefully know. She's a great thriller writer. She also writes rom-coms under the name Holly Cassidy. But there's a really powerful writing contingency up there in Canada, and Sydney is one of those writers. She's got she had 3 books out that were published that she kind of now labels as practice books. So she doesn't really advertise those too much, but she has 2 books out now that she does talk about. And the most recent one is Peril in Pink, which came out in 2024 from Crooked Lane Books. And Sydney is currently kind of writing, or her books that are out right now are cozy mysteries. We talked about kind of what makes a cozy, but she is definitely of the mindset, or in the mood, I should say, to, or has a specific idea about a thriller, something maybe a little bit darker, and she might be taking a stab at that. But we had a great conversation just about her journey, definitely the struggles, why does one keep writing in the face of all these rejections that we all get, how to persevere, how to find the joy, how to tune out the noise. And she has some great advice on that as well. And at the end, we made up a pretty compelling little short story based on Matt Goldman's The Murder Show. So overall, a really great episode. I love talking to her. This is my fantastic conversation with Sydney Leigh.
I am in a suburb of Toronto called Oakville.
Okay.
Same town actually as Hannah Mary McKinnon.
Right. That was our connection. The Canadian connection.
Yes.
Hannah's a lovely friend of mine and a brilliant writer. And how did you get to know Hannah?
I met her at a bookstore. I was signing a book, one of those little kiosk things years ago, and she approached me, and it was the year that BoucherCon was in Toronto. So we were chatting about that, and just over the years we got to know each other, and now she's one of my best friends, actually.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah, I've gotten to know her, obviously, like you, kind of through writing, book selling, all that fun stuff. And I've been on her first chapter fun where she and Hank will read the first chapter of a book, and it's amazing. But when Hannah reads, there's something she should be a vocal artist.
She's amazing.
There's something very alluring about her voice. It's like, I don't know what it is, but she's reading my first chapter. I'm like, that makes my writing sound a lot better.
I agree. I think she had me on for one of my books as well, and I was like, my book has never sounded better.
Right, exactly. Are you from Canada, from that area?
Yeah, I grew up in the prairies, but in Canada, and but I've lived out this way for 30 years.
What's it like growing up in the prairies of Canada? That sounds like a book title.
It's cold. Yeah. I mean, it's awesome. As a kid, you're like, it's super, because beginning, I was near, not far from the Rockies, which was awesome, growing up skiing and all that. And then a little bit later, I think when I was 9 or 10, I moved to Edmonton, which is really far north.
Yeah.
But As an adult, I'm sure it's maybe a little bit challenging, but as a kid, it meant summer nights were till like 11. So you're
Right,
up
totally.
all night just running wild in the neighborhood.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Do you kind of miss that return to the countryside? Have you ever thought about going back?
I mean, I'm definitely a city girl. So, I, but no, I don't think so. My life is so entrenched here,
Yeah, yeah,
so I
yeah.
don't think there's anywhere where I could be. I've lived in London, I lived in Vancouver, I
Oh,
lived in
you are a
Seattle.
city girl.
I've been around, a few cities. So
Yeah.
yeah,
I love visiting cities. I love exploring and walking. But I'm in the suburbs in Colorado, and
well,
I'm my partner and I are feeling kind of the need to be around fewer people as we get older. So I'm
I get,
I'm I'm less of a city person now than I ever have been.
yeah.
But that's what happens when your country's a shit show. You just want to like, where can I go and just not see anyone?
Yeah, I totally hear you. I live in the town that I live in. It's kind of funny because it is a setting for like a domestic suspense or a cozy because it's a lakeside community. I the weather's not too cold, I'll sit in my car and look at the boats and
Yeah,
it is really nice.
yeah, totally. And so now you have, from what I can gather, you have two books out. Is that correct?
Yeah,
And go
yeah.
ahead.
Oh no, I had three out, like I had three out previously. But they were I consider them kind of my practice, learning to write
Right.
books. They were published by like a micro publisher who I
Yeah.
don't think is even in business anymore.
Yeah.
So they're kind of not I just don't even, talk about them anymore. So
Yeah, it is interesting, right? So my very first book, so I wrote three books that I got an agent with, but I never sold. And then, so definitely practice books. Although I got an agent with them, so that was like further than I expected.
yeah.
But then my first sale was to a micro publisher who then went promptly out of business about 6 months after my book came out. And it is weird when people are like, oh, I'm going to go read your backlist. And I haven't looked at those first two or three books in a long time. And I'm like, I don't know what to say because I think they're good. They sold to publishers. Publishers
Yeah.
wanted them.
Yeah.
So a publisher wanted your book that you don't talk about anymore. So it's not like, it passed some kind of quality
Just
control
somehow.
test.
Somehow.
But yet we still feel like, no, you should really read my latest because I'm better, and I don't, yeah, it's funny. I don't know if that's true. I'm different as a writer than I was.
Hmm.
I'm probably better, but we just feel weird about those first books. And we probably
I feel
shouldn't.
super, super weird about them. I'm really like, "Ugh, no.
What prompted you? So was writing always in your DNA or?
No, it really wasn't. I kind of fell into it. I've always loved stories.
Mhm.
So, my life, my life changed a lot when I lived in Asia for a couple of years, and by chance, a friend of mine came to visit from Canada, and he wanted to take over a golf range of all things. And I was like, oh, that sounds like fun. I'll be your business partner. So I went
Mm.
and did that because the thinking was, work 95 hours a week from April to October, and then I can travel all winter, and it's going to be amazing.
Right.
So I did that 5 years without knowing much about business
Mm.
or golf. But I traveled.
Okay.
This is how I do things. But
Yeah.
I loved it, and anyways, it all kind of blew up in my face after 5 years, and I was like, oh my God, I don't know what to do now. And within a month, I was pregnant, and then so all of a sudden,
Mm.
I went from traveling and business owner to a stay-at-home mom, and I was like, oh, I don't know what's happening. So
Right.
I really just was going stir crazy. So my first book was a 1950s housewife protagonist because that's kind of how I felt.
But
So
but let's not diminish this because you kind of come off as like I was going stir crazy, so I wrote a book. 99.8% of people in the world don't do that.
right.
Because
Yeah.
writing a book, regardless of what the book is, it's a lot of work. So somewhere in there, you probably had a yearning, like a story in your mind, or just a sense of like, I can do this.
Yeah, well, I've always been drawn. I mean, I always love to read. Um, I wrote a really long undergrad thesis. Um, and I love hearing stories. I love thinking about stories. So I love the creative process.
Yeah. But it's very different than to do it yourself. Because, like, I always think about, like, I love music. I love all sorts of music. If
Yeah.
I were to sit down and actually try to write a song, I would feel like a schoolboy. I feel like I have
It
no
was,
idea what I'm doing.
I mean, the learning process was well, like wow. I was
Yeah.
like, wow, I really have no idea what I'm doing. So it was it was a long time. My first book, it was probably 2.5 years took
Yeah.
me to write. And then somehow the publisher they took me on and it was great because even though they may not be the greatest publisher in the world, it kept me writing. It was
Right.
enough of a push and I loved it. But if I had had zero feedback at all, I don't know that I would have kept doing it, but
Oh,
just
that's
that
interesting.
bit was enough to keep me going and I loved it. So
Yeah.
I just kept writing and after three with that, I just thought, I think I want to take it to the next level. So that's when I was like, okay, I've got to start taking some writing classes. I went to Thriller Fest. And yeah, so
Yeah.
then it was like a brand new journey of okay.
Right. Right. Which
Yeah.
is, yeah. And that initial start where you just wrote it, even though it took 2.5 years, which is not all that long, by the way. Um, I feel like when I coach, that's kind of why I'm like, trust your story. Don't, you, of course it's going to be a mess. You don't know what, because I started out not knowing anything about writing,
Mhm.
and I think you don't get it done unless you just let it come out of you, warts and all. And then you can
Yeah.
go back and edit and learn and, but having a publisher. So I don't know how it works as much in Canada. Are agents important in Canada or not so much?
Yeah, but so my first publisher was in the Pacific Northwest, like out of Oregon.
Okay.
And then so Crooked Lane was my second publisher.
Yep. Know
I was
them.
agented by then. And also Level Best, which is also a small publisher. So those were with my first agent, and then I changed agents I guess a year ago, and so I actually just handed in a new manuscript on Friday. So this
Oh,
hopefully you'll love
congratulations.
it, and this will
Yeah.
be my first time going on submission. But it was kind of a weird process because my agent actually passed away,
Oh,
um, and so it kind of was before a month or so before my book with Crooked Lane came out. So it was kind of a bizarre well, maybe 3 months before. Anyways, it was a
yeah.
kind of an unusual circumstance. And Hannah actually connected me with her agent, a phenomenal agent and agency. And she didn't really represent cozy mysteries, like light mysteries, which is typically what I write.
Yeah.
She said she'd read it, and I had my notebook ready to ask her a million questions, like, "Can you suggest somebody or any suggestions just from the writer point of view?" And she's like, "You know what?" She's like, "I read your book. It made me laugh. I need some lightness in my life. Let's do this." And so I was like, "Oh my God!"
Wow.
So
That's great.
very fortunate, and yeah, I feel just I'm so grateful. So yeah, it's been kind of a ooh,
Yeah. It's not an easy process I've been with the same agent for 21 years.
wow.
So, and she told me not too long ago, she's like, it's harder than ever
Well,
there's just so many
honestly,
submissions.
when I was querying, it felt like afterwards I took more writing classes because I felt like I had like PTSD, like I am the worst writer. Nobody likes anything I'm right. Like talk about, oh, it was just like
Yeah.
it's a tough journey for sure.
Yeah, the psychology of writing is something that I speak a lot about because you can defeat yourself very easily because it's a world of rejection and it's very easy to frame that rejection in a way that keeps you from moving forward as opposed to looking for the common threads in the rejection, using it as a tool to get better. So it can be very defeating, and it's a very hard thing to do to like be positive in the face of all that rejection. And I think the root of it has to be what you mentioned earlier. Are you having a good time? Are you enjoying this? Do you like storytelling? If
Right.
you wrote 20 books that no one ever saw, would your world end?
Mhm.
And if the answer, if you can push through all that and be like, no, I just want to do this. And if success comes, that's great. In those cases, I think success will come because you're not focused on it so much. Um,
Right.
I don't know. I've seen that evidence time and time again. But now you went and then you took some writing courses.
Mhm.
How did that change you? Because sometimes writing courses, I think, can be confusing. They can be like, this is how you do it, when you realize, like, well, that doesn't feel natural to me.
Um, I don't know. I don't know that it honestly made me that much better of a writer. I think what has hopefully made me a better writer is just writing, more
Yes,
writing.
100%.
I don't know that the courses themselves did that much, but it
Yeah,
just kept me writing. It was something to do. I
right.
liked new things. I liked challenging myself. So it was an experience.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that's fair. And I think if you're a writer who's struggling with, moving forward, surrounding yourself with writerly things, I think, is important. So, be it writing courses, be it going to conferences, which I think is critical to do no matter what your level is.
Right. Yeah.
Um, it continues to make you think about this not as a hobby, but as a career. It might be
Yeah.
a very non-paying career,
Right.
but that's
I
the
think,
mindset to
yeah.
have, I think.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, going to conferences, I find much more helpful. Like I went to Thriller Fest in 20, sorry, I have a big dog. She's barking
Oh, I
upstairs.
don't even hear her.
Okay, good. But I went to Thriller Fest in 2019.
Mhm.
I went there because I wanted to go to Pitch Fest, and I learned so much. It was tough because the first agent I met, and it was like the practice time. She said you're damaged goods because you have three books that were failures, and that was like, oh, okay.
Wow. Just
That was
cut
that was
cut right to the chase, why don't you?
New York agent. Sorry,
Right,
babe, damaged
right.
goods. I'm like, oh, all right. So, I went back to my room, cried a little bit, and then I'm like, well, they say you got to have a thick skin, so let's just keep on going. And but what was great, I mean, I do have a thick skin, and part of it is kind of getting that that type of feedback, I guess, from time
It's
to
those cold
time.
Canadian winters.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. But I met so many agents that kind of liked what I was saying, and while I didn't get an agent that way, I learned so much about myself and just, you know, a lot of them said like, having met you and talking about your book, here's some things that I would lean into.
Yeah,
And it was just phenomenally such a great learning experience
yeah,
and a great reason to go to New York. So,
totally. And that's, for the listeners out there, we've got aspiring writers who are listening, struggling writers. And something you just said really resonates, and I don't want to scare these writers, but the idea of like, hey, you're damaged goods because you have three books that didn't perform or perform the way that I would want them to perform as your would-be agent. So take a hike. There's truth to that, but that's not the end of the story. I mean, obviously, clearly, it's not the end of the story because you went
right.
on. But I'm wondering if that agent said anything like, you would have to publish under a different name or anything like that.
For sure. For sure. And that's what I've done. That's like Sydney. Sydney is my new name. And I love it because it's like I think of it as like my drag name because I love drag queens. I find them extremely
Hmm.
inspiring because they get up and they fail and they keep
Right.
going and they
It's like
laugh it off.
this is my persona. I own it.
This is my persona.
Yeah.
So me, this is who I am. So I just keep going. And for sure, like I think you have to have, I've had lots of failures writing because I don't have like a journalism background. I don't have a huge writing background. So there's been lots of fails. There's been lots of falling down, lots of rejection. But like it's my passion and you just keep going. And there's lots of long walks with good friends being
Hmm.
like, this is going terribly. And then I get up the next day and I just keep going. And
Yeah.
there's
Because you
been
love
some
it. Yeah.
because I love it. And I do have faith, that eventually, like, getting better, if you have a good enough story, it'll get there. you'll sell it. It just takes time.
Yeah, it takes time. It takes, when people always ask about advice for writers, there's a million things, but there's, it's the consistency is it. And you said it earlier. I learned because I wrote hundreds of thousands of words that maybe didn't go anywhere, but I needed those to get to where I am now. And I need the words I'm writing now to get to the place where I'm going to be. And you're right. It does take a long time. And I do think there's something, so you and I are similar. We started writing without any business doing it, right? No background, no formal training, no aspirations. And yes, there's a lot of challenges in that, but you're also much more purely you, I think, when you approach it from that way, as opposed to taking a million courses and saying like, well, here's the way to structure plot. I've got to make sure this happens in every chapter. And then you're just being a mechanic. You're not writing kind of from the soul. And I think not having that training is a little bit, for me, it's a little bit freeing.
Yeah, it's funny because I think like I take writing, that's my full-time job. I write at the library most days. So Monday to Friday, I'm there by 10. I stay till 1. So I write 3 hours solid.
Wow.
Every day. And then usually sometime in the afternoon, I try to get an hour and kind of either go over what I'm going to do the next day. I'm a wannabe plotter. I always wish I could plot, but I'm a pantser, discovery, stream of consciousness, however you want to say it. That's me.
That's how I am. Yeah.
Whenever I try, it just doesn't, I just can't see beyond, a few chapters ahead, or it just doesn't work.
But I that's so important, because this is the other thing I teach is like, I think it's great. And I think you have to try different methods, because you're new to it. And you're like, well, how do chapters work? I don't know. But I think over time you realize what's your nature. And I think being a pantser, which is totally what I am, I immediately deviate from any outline I ever try. Like I'm within pages, because it's the physical act of putting words on a screen that makes me think. And I can't think that way otherwise. And I've learned that about myself. So I think that's great that you're adhering to it, because I think that's where voice ultimately comes from, is trusting your way that you write. Because otherwise it can sound very manufactured, don't you think?
Right. Yeah, I still try. I still have a board and there's stickies everywhere, and I try, but it's usually like I find I plot like after. So I'll write the first draft. It's an absolute mess. And then I'll go back and be like, am I saying anything in this chapter? Or is it, so it's a really messy process. But and I keep trying. Like I'm starting a new book as of today, actually, and I have 2 chapters, and then already it's gone. Like second chapter is completely different than I thought it was going to be.
Totally, yeah. I think, but you trust your nature.
Exactly. I think there's that quote. It's like driving at night in the fog. That there's a writing quote. I can't remember who said it, but I really feel like that's what has worked for me, I guess.
Yeah, it's the way that I look at it is that it is already outlined. You just haven't discovered it yet. So when you get to that twist that is so surprising to you and you get excited, that was there the whole time in your subconscious. And it was just waiting for the right time to come out. So I just comfort myself saying, yeah, the story is there, but it's also a very scary thing, because writers are at nature highly insecure beings, and you're writing and you're thinking that this is not going anywhere. This makes no sense. And you're not trusting the story that's already inside of you, and it's a very hard thing to overcome, to say like, all right, I'm just going to write what comes to my head and see what a shit show it is or not.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. Like with one of my books, I was pretty sure it's a murder traditional mystery. So it's, somebody dies, you have to figure out who did it. And I was pretty sure I knew who the killer was. And I was like almost at the very end. And I'm thinking, oh my God, this isn't working, but I'm just going to keep going. I'll fix it. And then it was just weird. I was sitting there writing, and then all of a sudden it was like this character crept up behind me and was like, I did it. I was like, oh my God. And it just really, really, whew, I got chills. I was like,
that's amazing.
And I had
those are the best parts of writing.
Yeah. So
that's amazing. And, to be fair, I think as when you're writing more of a pure mystery, that's a lot of pressure because not only do you have to have the structure of a whodunit, you have that pressure of like, is it obvious? Is it too outlandish? Is it satisfying? As opposed to like a thriller suspense writer,
Mhm.
I'm like, I told you who the bad guy is on page 2. There's no
Right.
mystery
Well,
here. We're just
the funny
watching
thing,
some
yeah,
dude do some gnarly shit. Even though readers will still be like, I totally guessed it. I'm like, I told you who it was.
yeah. Well, I actually just started your book. I'm a big audiobook person. I
Oh,
started Tell Me What You Did
oh,
last night. And I'm like holding my dog close, like,
oh,
like,
that's funny.
oh, okay, can I keep going? Pause. Keep going, pause.
How I
And
have to
oh,
ask,
so good.
I haven't listened to any of it.
It's great.
There's a couple of actors, right? Yeah, and that sounds like okay.
Oh, it's phenomenal.
Uh,
Honestly, it's really got me. And when I'm writing, like so I've done mysteries in the past, but I've got this thriller idea. Um, no, no idea how to write a thriller. So I'm just immersing myself in the thriller worlds. I most of the time I listen to I go between thriller and romance. Um,
mm-hmm,
like modern romance, Emily Henry, Tessa Bailey, like a little spice, why not?
mm-hmm.
And so I kind of go back and forth between that. So I've got thrillers everywhere. Most of my books I consume through audiobook, but I always have something on my e-reader, well, my phone actually. And I always have a paper book. Those take me months at a time. So it's mostly audiobook and
Yeah,
or my phone. But
yeah, that's fair.
I it's so different thinking about a thriller because I'm like, it could the ending could be like literally anything.
It
It's
could
so
be anything.
I
It
don't
doesn't
have to.
have, it could be opaque.
So
We don't have to have, even though people get annoyed by that, you don't have to have this resolution that a mystery
right.
kind of demands that you
It
have.
does. It does. Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yes, I'm kind of excited. I don't know. I'm I haven't mentioned it to my agent or anything, but I've had this idea for a while and I thought, well, while I'm waiting for her to get back to me on what she thinks of my book, I just handed in. I'm like, now's the time. Like, why
right.
not?
100%. And you can, and there's also things that you can explore about yourself, right? By trying something differently. Like, you think of a cozy as being, it's dark, but it doesn't treat, and this is my viewpoint, doesn't treat death as dark, certainly not as dark as maybe a thriller would treat it,
Definitely.
with the same kind
There's
of
no sense
gravity.
of yeah, there's no sense of tragedy. So there's
That's a good way
murder,
of putting it.
but yeah, you never like and I'm not one I can't read books that make me cry. It's I like to laugh and I like to be scared and I like to figure out a puzzle, but yeah, there's definitely like the cozy. It's like wrapping yourself in a blanket. You're
Yeah.
warm, you feel good. And yeah, somebody died, but we didn't really like that guy anyway, so it's all right.
Right, right, right. It's a very Murder She Wrote,
Mhm.
entertaining, and safe kind of
Yeah,
way to approach intrigue and mystery. And with thrillers, it really has, in my opinion, it has to really be emotion first. So you do get that raw, visceral, gutted, this is happening to me and
yeah,
I've got to deal with it and it's real.
yeah.
And so you can explore different sides of your own psyche through
I
that
love it.
process.
Yeah, it's really fun. Even this morning, I'm like, ooh, oh yeah, oh my God. And like I'm like reading
Right,
myself. I'm
right.
surrounded by high school kids and they must be like, what is she doing? Because I'm like, ooh, oh, oh, my
Yeah,
face. Ooh.
totally. And I think it's important for listeners to realize too, it's like you're not pigeonholed into something. So let's use Hannah as another great example. Hannah Mary McKinnon writes thrillers. As Holly Cassidy, she writes holiday rom-coms.
Yeah,
Totally disparate styles of books. Each of them give her enormous amounts of pleasure to
yes,
write, and each of which have been successful.
yeah,
So why not?
exactly. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So are
It's
you going to Thriller Fest this year then?
No, this year I'm going to Malice Domestic, which is in
Oh,
North Bethesda, Maryland, and that is a light slash traditional mystery conference.
that's
Um,
great.
so yeah, so that's because I had two books out in 2024, both light mysteries, so that's kind of what makes sense this year. Um, but I mean, Thriller Fest in New York City are phenomenal, so I
Yeah.
definitely hope to go there again in the future. We'll just have to see what happens.
Yeah, it's expensive. I mean, it's great. I love going, but
Yeah.
it's always like because you think like registration's registration. I mean, it's not necessarily cheap, but it's then the hotel rooms and obviously the flights and things like that that add up. But it is. I mean, it's just my people. I love
Yeah.
going there and seeing everybody. But somebody was asking me last night, actually, like, do you recommend I go? And I tend to only go when I have a book out, selfishly. That's most years, but still, there are years where I don't have a book out, and I'm like, do I really want to spend all this? And then I miss it. So I usually go
Right.
to Thriller Fest and BoucherCon. Those are kind of my two, and then festivals and things like that as they come up. But being surrounded by that community, I think keeps you going. It really,
Yeah. I love
having
being,
talks like this, with
yeah,
other writers and just being in that world.
for sure. Yeah. I think BoucherCon is going to be in Calgary, my
Oh,
hometown.
is that
And
next year?
I think yeah, 2026, I think. And
Yeah,
Jennifer
because this
Hillier,
year it's New Orleans.
right. Yeah. So yeah, Jennifer Hillier, I think is one of the big authors going.
Oh
She's
yeah, she's great.
also a friend of mine. And so I figured it's gonna be super fun. Hannah will be there. So I'm definitely gonna go to that.
Is Jennifer Canadian? No.
Yeah, she lives
Oh,
in
she
Oakville
is. Oh,
too.
I
Yeah.
guess I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
Yep,
It's a small town with a lot of writers.
yeah, that's fantastic. That's great to have
Yeah.
that kind of community for sure. So
Yeah.
Calgary next year, yeah, that sounds pretty exciting to me.
Yeah.
And so now you're going on submission right now with something.
Yeah, I'm waiting to hear the feedback from my agent and see, any things that she wants me to change or whatever. Totally open to. I trust her completely, and then hopefully we'll go on submission soon. Hopefully it'll, sell amazing. And
Yep.
in the meantime, I'll try my hand at a thriller and see what happens.
Yeah, and it's a long process these days to like
For sure.
get somebody even with a great agent and a good reputation to like
Mhm.
get the time to like, okay, now I'm going to read this manuscript and see if I want to bid on it. I co-wrote a YA thriller. That's kind of out on submission right now. We have it in a couple places just because they're friends, but even hearing back from them, like we don't, you know.
I know. It takes, honestly, it takes forever. I always think, my job is to write.
Right,
What happens after that is kind of out of my hands.
right.
So I do the best I can at writing. I dedicate my time. If I waited for feedback before I kept writing, oh my God. I
Yeah,
mean,
right.
really be sitting around for months and then you don't have another book. So
Yep,
either
totally.
my job is to write and then I put it, give it to my agent and then
Right.
that's when she
That's her
takes
job.
over.
And you keep on top of your agent and things like that. But you're right. I mean, my goal when I had those first three books that never sold, that was all new to me at the time, the whole submission process. I didn't know anything.
Yeah.
But it took about a year to get the 17 or 18 rejections from publishers. And so I learned, let me make sure I have another manuscript ready to go because my agent's going to drop me if nothing sells because I don't have anything else.
Right.
And so that kind of taught me to just like you just said, keep writing. You can't what good is sitting around waiting going to do? That's all going to help resolve itself without your input. So you just keep writing, you keep getting better. And you go to your library 3 hours a day and just keep producing. And then at some point you're going to be undeniable, I think, because
Hopefully.
you've just done all of that. Yeah, I just think it happens. I think the people who are really committed and who are vulnerable and are willing to learn, and find the way that lets them learn best and to take risks and has that just unfettered joy of writing.
Absolutely.
I think good things happen. And because they're not focused on the good things happening, they're focused on the joy of the writing and learning and getting
Right.
better.
Yeah.
But it does, to your point earlier, it it takes time.
It takes time. And it's funny because lately what I've realized, other than, just, sitting down and doing the writing, I found I had to take a step back from social media because I was feeling that was taking away some of my joy of writing. So I've for now I'm just going on Fridays to do social media because I feel like,
Smart.
when I was going on and I was like, my books are not on lists. Um, I'm seeing all these people with amazing successes and I'm thrilled for them. But I feel like, oh, it just adds to my self-doubt and my feeling of, the imposter syndrome. So instead of letting those doubts creep out, I have to block that out. So Fridays, fine, go on, answer stuff, post stuff, whatever, do whatever. But other than that, I had to take a step back in that way.
Yeah, that's really great advice to listeners, and not necessarily that specific advice, because it can be whatever, but that
Yeah.
self-identification of this is not helping me, whatever that thing is. For me, it's reading the news. So I don't look at the news every day. I go every other day because I need peace of mind, and I don't want to be ignorant. And the same thing with social media. It's like, what, compare and despair is what they call it. Like, you just say, everyone's like, look how great, but I mean, I'll tell you from my own experience. So tell me what you did is doing well. I don't know how you want to define it. If you wanted to define it as a breakout novel, but it's my 10th published book. It's my,
Right.
13th written book. It's been 22 years, so it's not like I'm this overnight success. It's a
Right.
long, slow build. And I think the other thing is you have to really define what success is for you.
Mhm.
Early on, I'm like, hey, success for me is getting an agent. If I can get somebody who's not a relative
Mhm.
and who takes a risk on my book, to me, that shows that I'm a good writer, and that's success. And then
Right.
you keep moving the goalposts as you hit those things. But if you start on day one and say, I'm going to make $1 million and be a New York Times bestseller, you're probably stretching things a little bit. So
Right.
you want to
Yeah,
set reasonable goals.
for sure. Like for me, my original goal is just to finish a book. I
Right.
just want to write it. I want to get it done. And
Totally.
then it was, I want to see my book in a bookstore.
Right.
And then it was,
Totally. Yeah.
I want to see it on the shelf. And then it was, get an agent. And then it was get a good contract. But yeah, it's always like, and then I think what I would say that I sometimes forget is like to stop and be like, oh, yay. Be like, okay, I got that. Now what?
Yeah.
And then now what I have to do. So it's like, okay,
Right.
breathe it in. Okay. So I'm trying to remember to do that, to, you know, enjoy the moment when you have, because, it's a tough business. So you have to
Yeah.
have those moments you're like, oh, this is really fun.
You lose perspective, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny, your social media comments. My partner once, I told her a few years ago, and I'm like, I said the same thing. I'm like, sometimes I go on there and I see these posts and I'm happy for them, but I'm jealous and I get frustrated. Like, why isn't this happening for me? And she said, I bet your posts do that to other people. And I hadn't thought about that. And I'm like,
Mhm.
that's a really interesting point. And I should be, like you said, stopping, being grateful for whatever success I have achieved, hitting these goals, and not feel like, but it's not enough. It is enough. Whatever, be grateful for whatever you have, because the act of writing a book, even if no one in the world sees it, is something most people will never, ever, ever do. And you should be proud of that and grateful to your ability to do that, I think.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, it's funny, even like just before coming on here, I was like listening to some of your other interviews. Oh my God, these people are so accomplished and their books are amazing. And it's like, well, just go on, be yourself, do your best. I mean, what else are you gonna do?
Right.
It's all you got. So
Yeah. And that's the thing, is I think it's really hard. Confidence is not a thing that the stereotypical writer does not exude confidence. And it's really hard to have confidence when you feel like the act of writing, it's very solitary. On submission, you can kind of feel like you're in a vacuum or an echo chamber.
right.
And so it's hard to feel like confident. But that comes with, like you said earlier, just writing. And then you start to see rejections that, very, very few rejections say your writing is terrible. But I think these rejections are honest. I don't think they're necessarily sugarcoating things, but I think once you go through an agent, by the time it gets to a publisher, the writing is great. It's not a fit at this time. They're looking at the market, whatever. And that should give you confidence. You're like, okay, I'm a good writer, and it just didn't find the right home, because that's most of selling a book, is just that beautiful magic of that story happens to find the right person at the right time, and you have zero control over it.
Right.
So there's nothing more you can do.
Yeah,
So,
that's it.
Well, listen, Sydney, we're going to wrap up. Before we do, we have the fun part of the show, because you've listened to a couple episodes, so you know that this is the part where we make up a story together. And this can be your thriller side. You can be brutal. It can be cozy. It can be we can do whatever we want with it. So I've chosen 3 books at random off my bookshelves. You're going to choose one of those books. We're going to choose a random sentence from a random page. I'm going to read that sentence, and that'll be the first sentence in like a 2 or 3 minute long short story. I'll read that sentence, and you give me the next 1 or 2 sentences. I'll do a couple. And then when it goes off the rails, I will put a bullet in its head.
Sounds good.
So I have the lovely Elmar's Your Dark Secrets, Matt Goldman's The Murder Show, and Alison Brennan's The Missing Witness. So choose one of those. I don't know if there's a Canadian in that lot. I'm not sure.
I don't know. Let's do The Murder Show.
Murder Show by Matt Goldman. So give me a page number between 1 and 292.
Oh my gosh. 78.
It's kind of a short book. I'm always fascinated with word count. I wish you could see word count like on printed on the book, because I'm like, how do they get away with writing the 65,000? Or this one's 100,000. Boy, that's so long. All right, I'm going to quickly look. A lot of dialogue on this page. Let me find a sentence that might work here. Oh my God, there's just a lot going on here. This is really random. So you do, but it's very open-ended. So you can do, this is somebody named Ethan, obviously talking to somebody else. Yes, says Ethan, but he does not elaborate.
That's all you got? Can you give me some hint? Something, please.
She knew Ethan was holding back, and she suspected why he was holding back. He didn't want to hurt her, she thought. But if she didn't find out the truth about what her husband was doing, she might just go crazy.
Just give me a name. I want a name. I deserve a name. Give me that.
Ethan's face flushed, his nervousness becoming readily apparent. He looked down, scruffed the ground with the tip of his shoe, and mumbled a name. And to her, it wasn't the name of another woman. It was the name of a man.
I knew the business partnership had gone south. I didn't know that was the reason. Sorry.
No, you're good. A million stories flashed in her head. A million suspicions that occurred throughout their 20-year marriage. And that's the funny thing about suspicions. We dismiss them so readily, but when you add them all up together, there's a reality in front of you that's undeniable. And she knew at that moment her husband was not at all the person she thought he'd been.
And she thought coming in here, she'd leave feeling worse. But something about the finality of his words gave her freedom, gave her hope. This was done. There was no going back, and she was ready to start a new chapter.
Oh, I think we call it there. That was great. See, now a thriller writer is going to make sure she goes and offs her husband, and does it not with does it by hand somehow. Makes it really personal.
Yeah. Poison.
That was good. How did that feel?
Oh, fun. You know what? Actually, I take not currently, but I often do improv classes at my community center.
That's amazing.
I just
Yeah.
it's such a new way to think, and I like, as I said, I like trying new things. So
Yeah, I think that's great. Yeah, I've never done that, but I've heard from a lot of writers actually who do improv, and it is that mechanism of kind of dovetails with the end of your story of that freedom of like what happens happens, and also just that sense of like if I look like an idiot, I look like an idiot. Like who cares? Like the
yeah.
stakes are very low, but it allows you to kind of free yourself a little bit. So I think and so I get nervous every time I do this. I'm like, oh, what if I don't think of anything? And
Yeah.
but afterwards, I'm like, okay, good for you that you pushed through that. I think even though again, the stakes are exceptionally low.
Well, it's funny. I was actually so at Thriller Fest, I was in the debut breakfast, and
Oh
I
yeah.
did not know it was going to be so big. I was thinking, oh, there'll be like 10, 15
Oh,
people.
it's a couple, few hundred people.
Yeah. So I stood up, I held up my book, and I was shaking so badly it actually fell out of my hands and onto the floor. It's like,
Wow,
yeah,
that's
like,
good. That's
oh
classic.
yeah. And one of my friends said to me, you need to do something to work on your presentation skills. And so she actually said, have you ever thought about giving improv a try? And I was like,
Yeah,
nope, but why not?
throwing
And
yourself out there.
what, you
Totally.
know what? It's funny, it's awkward, and I love it. It's just a weird, odd thing. And every time I stand up, I go, God, why am I doing this again? And then I'm like, here
Yeah,
we go.
it's fascinating to me. So I'm actually co-chair of the debut committee, and so right now I'm in the middle of trying to book a restaurant where all the debuts go the night before, where they practice that 1 minute speech. And it's true, like the collective fear about speaking for one, because you're not just speaking for 1 minute, you're speaking for 1 minute about yourself, and
Yeah.
that's what really scares people is that like I don't like putting myself out there. I don't like talking about my book. Yeah, I'd rather talk about something another person because writers are like that. Writers are kind of introverts. So it's that dinner the night before is always like a lot of drinking going on.
Yeah.
Well, Sydney, what a pleasure to talk to you. I'm glad we connected, and maybe Hannah will listen to the show, and since she knows both of us. But
Yeah.
congratulations on the success you've had and all the success that's coming your way in the future.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for having me on. It's been an absolute pleasure, and you've got a great show, and I can't wait to see what happens with Peril. I'm like, so I'm excited. Thank
I
you.
hope you finish it.
Oh, I will. I will. It's great. It's great. It's
Okay.
got it. I mean, I'm hooked. Like from the first chapter, I'm like, okay,
Oh,
I'm in.
good. Oh, good. That
Yeah.
makes me
Yeah.
happy. Well, have a great week, and hope to run into you sometime.
Yeah, you too. Take
All right, take
care.
care. All right, that is my conversation with Sydney Leigh. I say Leigh, it might be Lee, Leigh. You figure it out for yourself. Hopefully, I didn't say it incorrectly, Sydney. If so, I apologize. Her latest book is Peril in Pink from Crooked Lane Books. That was out last year. You can read all about Sydney at her website, sydneyleighbooks.com. And while you're online, check out carterwilson.com. You can read about my new thriller, Tell Me What You Did. You can check out my events, sign up for my newsletter, read my musings, and then hop on over to unboundwriter.com if you're interested in my one-on-one coaching, self-guided online classes, writing retreats, or writing workshops. That's all on there at unboundwriter.com. All right, friends, that is it. That is wrapping up this episode of Making It Up. Another episode out just next week. In the meantime, thanks as always for watching and or listening. Take care.